So the next body system, the next function we're talking about is the endocrine system. Ash? Omar. So within our bodies, like our organs need to communicate with each other, right? Information needs to be passed from one part of the body to another for all sorts of different reasons. And so it's chemicals, it's special proteins that allow this to happen. And we call those chemicals that allow our body to communicate hormones. A hormone is a protein molecule. Okay? Hormones are produced by endocrine glands. We have a whole series of glands in our body, organs whose job is to produce these hormones at certain times to allow communication throughout our body. And these hormones, they travel through our bloodstream. So, for example, your thyroid gland produces hormones that regulate your metabolism, how your body uses energy. And it sends those hormones into your blood. They circulate around your body, and they affect different cells. So just like we talked about when we went over your test, the key thing about these hormones, which are proteins, is their shape. The shape of a hormone matches with a receptor molecule that's on a cell membrane. Okay? That's the key thing. Because hormones are proteins, it's their shape that is so important. So if you look at this diagram over here, here's a model of a cell. It has attached to it some receptor molecules. You could think of them as sort of listening for a signal from another cell. And those signals are the hormones. You can see hormone A has a shape that fits in with the receptor molecule. Now, they don't look like little circles and triangles, but this can help us understand it. So this hormone, it's going to affect this cell because this cell has the proper receptor molecules. Okay? It's not going to affect this cell. This cell doesn't have receptors for hormone A, so it's not going to be affected by it. This cell could be affected by hormones A or B because it has both of those. So our cells have these receptors, and they're sort of listening for a signal from one of these hormones. And when a hormone attaches to it, it causes something to happen inside of the cell. It can cause a whole host of things. It could cause the cell to divide or use energy in a different way or take in some molecule. But it helps these hormones regulate our metabolism, homeostasis, growth, development. All of those things are regulated by hormones. And hormones can be produced by these glands certain times of the day, for example. Hormones are responsible for, making you tired and helping you to sleep at night. Hormones are responsible for hunger and things like that. Hormones are responsible for regulating our blood sugar. All sorts of things in our body are regulated by this complex system of hormones. And they work. So our nervous system also allows our body to communicate from one part to another. Hormones work in a little bit slower way because the hormones have to be produced in a gland, circulate throughout the body and the bloodstream, attach to receptor molecules to cause a change to actually happen. And we see just here another diagram showing that these hormones are made by certain cells. They go into our bloodstream and they affect target cells. All right, so different hormones work in different ways. Some hormones attach to receptors on the cell membrane, like we just looked at, but also other hormones can actually get into the cell and bind to a receptor molecule inside of the cell. And these systems of hormones work on what we call a feedback system. So feedback is when our bodies, parts of our body, organs, kind of monitor conditions and make constant adjustments. When one hormone level goes up, it can cause another hormone to decrease. Okay. So for example, our hypothalamus is a part of our brain, and it tells a gland in our called our pituitary gland when to produce certain hormones. And these hormones affect our thyroid gland, and those hormone levels affect other glands as well. So there's this complex system of hormones interacting and regulating each other, and we call that a feedback system. Here's another example that I'm sure you're familiar with. Our blood sugar. So we need glucose in our blood to provide. Why do we need glucose? We should know now why. We need because it's the source of energy. It's the fuel for respiration, which we just learned about. All of our cells need glucose in order to provide the mitochondria with the fuel that's going to make ATP. So having the proper level of glucose in your blood is really important. If actually the level of glucose in your blood is too high, it can cause serious problems with your kidneys, with nerve cells, with vision. At the same time, if our blood glucose level is too low, that also could cause problems. It could cause a person to be weak, to be lethargic, to have no energy, or even to go into a coma if it's too low for too long. So it's really important that our body maintains homeostasis in relation to blood glucose levels. And it does that through two different hormones. And one of them, I'm sure you've heard of. What's the hormone you've heard of that regulates our blood sugar? Insulin. Insulin. So when the amount of sugar, let's say you just ate a Pop-Tart, and I don't know what are flavors of Pop-Tarts. All right, fine, Omar. We got cookies and cream Pop-Tart. Right now in your digestive system, sugar is being absorbed into your blood, and your blood glucose levels are on the rise. Like I just said, that could be dangerous because if they stay elevated, it can cause problems. But for most people, they're not going to stay elevated because as your body monitors your blood glucose level, it says, uh-oh, blood glucose getting too high. Your pancreas puts insulin into your blood. And insulin is a hormone. It travels all throughout your bloodstream. And when it gets to cells in your liver, they have a receptor molecule that binds to it. And when this happens, it tells your liver, take in some of this glucose. There's too much in the blood. You need to store some away and get it out of the blood. And so that's what happens. Your liver will take in glucose from your blood and store it for a while. Okay, so then you go through first block, second block. Your blood sugar level now is declining. You haven't eaten anything in a while. Starting to feel kind of bad. Start to get a headache. Well, your body says, okay, we don't have enough glucose in the blood. And it sends a different hormone called glucagon into your blood. Glucagon goes to your liver and says, hey, glucose level's too low. You need to put some back into the blood. And that brings your blood sugar level back up. So we have these two hormones doing opposite things. Insulin lowers your blood sugar. Glucagon increases your blood sugar to keep it about the proper level. Even if you're exercising, these hormones can keep your blood sugar at the proper level. If you've eaten a lot of sugar, these hormones can keep your blood sugar at the proper level. Unless what? So when does this break down? Or when does it not work properly? Yeah, if a person has diabetes. In diabetes, for some reason, there's different reasons a person could have diabetes. Their pancreas is not producing insulin, or their cells are not responding to it. Sometimes a person their own body can destroy cells in their pancreas, causing them to no longer make insulin. That's one way people get type 1 diabetes, where their pancreas is not producing insulin. And other times there's other reasons why our body doesn't respond to insulin. But that presents a problem. So when a person does have diabetes, how do they manage it? How do they know when to give themselves insulin or not? Yeah, they have to test their own blood. So typically in a person that doesn't have diabetes, their pancreas is monitoring their blood glucose. But because the system is broken down, they have to do it themselves, right? They test their blood sugar several times a day. What do they do if they find their blood sugar levels too high? They give themselves insulin. Sometimes some people inject themselves with insulin. Some people have a patch, like a pod, that gives them insulin into their skin. Some people have an insulin pump. But in some, there's insulin inhalers. But somehow they give themselves insulin. That's synthetic insulin because their body's not making it. And that will bring their blood sugar level down. What happens when they test and their blood sugar is too low? They have to eat something, right? They might have to drink some juice. They might have to have some kind of snack that's going to put some glucose back into their body to raise their blood glucose level up again. So we can see that here in this graph. We see these changes over time. We can see, after we eat and digest our food, typically our blood sugar levels increase. Then insulin from our pancreas brings that level back down. If our blood sugar level drops, glucagon brings it back up. So we have the system that's designed, that's adapted to keeping our blood sugar at the proper level. So like we just talked about, diabetes is when the system breaks down for some reason. Okay? It could be because of damage to the pancreas. Okay? And again, we just talked about, that can lead to a person being unable to control their blood sugar internally, and they have to do it on their own. There's also other endocrine disorders. Our thyroid gland regulates our metabolism. Sometimes people have an underactive thyroid gland, okay, and they have a low metabolic rate. Okay, they may gain weight very easily. Because their body is not burning energy as it normally would. Can lead to a swelling in their thyroid gland called the goiter. It can be caused by a lack of iodine. Our thyroid gland needs iodine in order to function. That's why we have iodized salt. If you ever look at a salt container, it's to give us iodine to help our thyroid gland. Sometimes a person has the opposite problem and their thyroid gland's too active and it produces too much hormones and their metabolism is very high. Could lead to them not being able to maintain a healthy weight and being underweight. Can lead to them having an elevated heart rate. And again, there's sometimes people that have these conditions can take synthetic hormones to help regulate it. Sometimes they might have to have surgery on their thyroid gland. Here you see some examples of that. Obviously, we have insulin and blood testing tools. This is a goiter. That's a really big goiter for somebody that has a thyroid gland disorder. It starts swelling up into a level where it can look like that. A person may have to have surgery. Sometimes a person has part of their thyroid gland removed or radiated. Also, thyroid disorders in childhood can lead to problems with growth, like cretinism. This is also a thyroid problem where a person is swelling in their eyes. Also, our pituitary gland in our brain produces growth hormone. Growth hormone, for example, in many of you is increasing now because you're growing. Growth hormone tells your bones and muscles to elongate and grow longer. That's why you grow taller as you grow. Sometimes people have an underactive pituitary and their body doesn't produce enough growth hormone. And that can lead to them permanently having an abnormally below average height. Other times, the opposite issue can happen. That can lead to gigantism. Sometimes a person has a pituitary disorder that causes their body to continually produce growth hormone, so they grow abnormally tall. So we can see, you know who that is? Yes. Andre the Giant had a pituitary disorder. That's why he grew to such a tall height. Anyone know who that is? Yes. And he had an underactive pituitary gland, which led to him being of an abnormally short height. Andre the Giant. 7'4", 520 pounds, professional wrestler. How do you guys all know Andre the Giant? I don't know. I actually saw Andre the Giant live at the Utica Auditorium, WWF wrestling, when I was like 10 years old. Yeah. What do you mean he's that old? Are you saying I'm old, John? Okay. Yeah, Andre the Giant's dead. Yeah, he died a while back. What's that? Yes. People generally don't, because it's hard for your body to support being that height or that size. And who does?
The guy with the white shirt.
This guy?
No, the guy in the white shirt.
Oh yeah, that? It looks like me? No. Come on.
I thought it was you.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks. You guys know this reference? Oh, you guys are good. You don't know this reference? No one's going to know this one.
I know what
This is about the circulatory system. Miss Hennessy, any idea this reference?
I don't know vampires.
No. This is the band Heart.
I don't know.
They do look a little vampire-ish.
Yeah, and it's like fucking blood.